The Jackson Base Armory was usually quiet, but tonight Maya Carter felt like someone was watching her from the shadows. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air, and the fluorescent lights flickered as if they were about to go out. Every movement she made echoed with the sharp sound of metal. Maya was used to the solitude, but she never got used to the feeling of danger. When the steel door behind her suddenly swung open with a loud kick, she was startled and dropped the entire bolt lock onto the floor. A tall man rushed in, breathing heavily as if he had just run all the way from the base. His shirt was covered in dust, and a pistol was tucked into his waist. Before she could react, he raised his hands, signaling that he was not threatening. "Don't move," he said, his voice low and firm. "I need you right now." Maya took a half step back, her eyes fixed on the tag on his chest. Captain James Marshall, 75th Ranger Regiment. "How did you get in here?" Maya asked, furtively reaching for the hammer. She had never met Marshall before, but she had heard too many rumors. The man sent in when things were getting out of hand. "We don't have time." Marshall walked straight to the desk and dumped a stack of documents on it. "I need you to confirm something, and I need an answer now." Maya frowned. "What?" Marshall opened a military map and pointed to a location, a remote mountainside in the Middle East, where helicopters were hard to reach and drones were regularly shot down. 36 hours ago, he said, a 50 BMG round fired from 3,800 meters killed a high-level target. Many American lives were saved, but no one knows who fired the shot. Time seemed to stop. A chill ran down Maya's spine. 3,800 meters? She almost laughed. No one can do that. No way. Marshall pulled out a photo of the Barrett M82 that had been left at the scene. What she saw stopped her in her tracks. A rubber scope mount, the same one she always used to stabilize the sight. "I found your fingerprints on this gun," Marshall said softly but sharply. The air shattered. "I just fix guns," Maya snapped. "Hundreds of them, every day. But only one soldier asked you about cold-bore shots and extreme wind trajectories." Marshall paused, his eyes fixed on her. "And that person is now gone. Did you talk to him?" An alarm sounded outside the base. Marshall grabbed the radio and pressed a button. "Target might be on base," he said urgently. "Lock down all gates." Maya felt her heart squeeze. The legendary sniper, a ghost who knew her secret, could be right here in the base, just steps away. Marshall looked straight at her. "Maya, the shooter can't be outside. He's coming back for you." Jackson was plunged into darkness as the alert went to level 3, the level that only a real attack would be triggered. Red lights flashed in the hallways. Sirens wailed in the heavy air. Soldiers ran down the hallways, guns raised, faces tense. Maya and Captain Marshall rushed out of the armory, following the dim light. Marshall didn't say a word, just pulled Maya against the wall as the patrol passed. "What are we looking for?" Maya gasped, her hands still shaking from the shock from the previous chapter. Marshall whispered, his eyes scanning every dark corner. "It's not us. He's looking for you." A small explosion sounded in the distance, like a loud metallic clang, not loud enough to set off a new alarm, but enough to make them both turn. Marshall drew his Glock, signaling silence. Maya felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "The base's defenses detected no intrusion," Maya whispered, "which means this person has a valid pass." "Exactly," said Marshall. "A soldier, a ghost." They had just reached the intersection when the lights flickered wildly, then went out for half a second. When they came back on, a figure stood on the roof of the far warehouse, tall, lean, moving slightly as if surveying the area. The figure vanished before Maya could see the outline of his left arm, a circular compass tattoo. Maya choked. "James, that's him. That's the one I met." Marshall immediately put the radio to his ear. "Ghost 6 is here. He's in the western warehouse. All teams close in a triangle. Don't let him escape." A UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter roared from behind, its blades churning up dust. Its headlights scanned the rooftops as if searching for traces of an invisible assassin. But Ryan Cole, if it was really him, was gone. Marshall pulled Maya across the yard, the sound of the helicopter's rotors vibrating in her bones, making her shiver. "He didn't come here to shoot," Marshall said. "He came here as a warning, to remind you that a 3,800-meter shot isn't the last thing he'll do." "So why were you looking for me?" Maya asked, her voice almost breaking. "Because you know something no one else knows. He didn't do it alone, and he wanted to make sure you didn't tell anyone else." Suddenly, a red laser beam passed across Maya's chest and then immediately turned off. Marshall pushed her to the ground, shouting, "Sniper, go to lie!" Soldiers scattered, hiding behind walls and armored vehicles. Helicopter headlights swept into the northern woods. A near whispering voice came through Maya's radio, even though she hadn't turned on the device. "Maya, you did a good job, but you talked too much." Her heart stopped for a second. "Ryan," she stuttered. The signal fades, but enough to hear the last sentence. "Don't interfere. This is none of your business." Marshall immediately grabbed the headphones, but it was too late. The signal was gone. The helicopter continued to sweep the sky, but the ghost had retreated silently, leaving no trace, as if it could pass through the high-security base without anyone catching it. Marshall clenched his jaw. He just used the internal frequency, which means he used to belong here. Maya looked toward the dark forest, her hands still shaking. "James, if he can get into the base, get to me in seconds, then he can kill anyone." Marshall nodded slightly. "Exactly, and I believe his next target isn't you." He looked toward the senior officer's barracks. It's someone much older. The air in the command room was thick, like before a storm. Screens all over the walls showed heat maps, infrared signals, alarm data, but everything was blank. No signs of intrusion, no unusual movements, no security camera footage. And that's what sent a shiver down Captain Marshall's spine. The one who penetrated a level 3 base without leaving a trace. Marshall clenched his fist. No ordinary soldier. This is technology, engineering, and a lot of training. Maya stood behind him, her earpiece still vibrating slightly from that ghostly call. If he was once part of this force, then why become an enemy? Marshall didn't answer right away. He pressed a button on the console. "Foster, give me the Ghost 6 code file." Agent David Foster, from CID, appeared with a tense expression. He placed the thick file down on the table. The sound of it collapsing startled the whole room. "We think you should see this," Foster said, looking at Maya. The first page flipped open, a familiar face, sharp eyes, cold silence, and on his left arm, a compass tattoo. "Ryan Cole, sniper, Tier 1, top Roman 20. Maya felt her heart drop. "We call him Ghost 6, Foster continued. "In the years before he disappeared, Ryan specialized in missions that we cannot record. He knows how to disable security cameras, jam signals, hide heat," Marshall added. "Everything we saw tonight, it was his signature." Maya swallowed, trying to calm down. "Why did he come back? Why look for me?" Foster turned the next page. The image appeared. The repaired Barrett Maya, lying in the evidence room with a small notch in the barrel, a scratch she had made when replacing parts. "He chose that gun to shoot at 3,800 meters, Foster said, "which means he trusts you." Maya shook her head. "I just fix guns, that's all." "No," Foster said softly but sharply. "You talked to him. You explained cold bore drift, multi-layer winds, bullet spin. Not everyone knows that stuff." The air fell silent. Marshall suddenly slammed his hand on the table. "He didn't come back to kill you. He wanted to test you, to see if you would betray him." Maya stepped back, trembling slightly. "And if I betray?" "He will come back," Foster replied, "but not as a warning." The room light flashes 3 times, signaling a system failure. The screen displays the message: unauthorized access, compromised, unauthorized server, system compromised. Marshall rushed to the console. "Impossible. The internal system is Omega-level encrypted. Only we—" A new line appeared. Maya saw it first. She almost choked. "Stop chasing me. You won't find me, but I'll find him." "Him?" Foster asked. "Who is he referring to?" Marshall looked at Maya, his eyes more serious than ever before. "He wasn't after you. He was after some high-ranking officer, a big target." Maya suddenly remembered what Ryan said on the radio. "This is none of your business." Which means his plan is longer, bigger, and much more dangerous than a single record shot. Maya whispered, her lips almost bloodless. "James, he's preparing for another shot." Marshall nodded slowly. "And this time, no one will live to tell the tale." The CID's secret archives were deep underground, the steel doors nearly a meter thick, locked with 3 layers of biometric identification. As the doors slid open, the air felt cold, like stepping into a secret military cemetery. Each file here contained things that should never be spoken. Agent Foster led the way, Marshall and Maya following. "Ghost 6 is no ordinary sniper," Foster said. "Ryan Cole was our living weapon." Maya was silent, her hands tightening on the straps of her backpack. She didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were coming together. Foster stopped in front of a locked cabinet that opened with a mechanical key. No electronics, as this was a document that was not allowed to be copied. The thickest file was pulled out. On the cover there was only one line. "Cole, Ryan, classified Omega Black." Maya felt her heart tighten. Why would a sniper have a profile of Omega Black? That's a level for unofficial activities. Foster nodded. Yes, missions the government doesn't acknowledge. Marshall sighed. Ryan was involved in marking a series of war criminals, eliminating targets we couldn't catch. He was the dark hand. Foster opened the file. Photos appeared. Shots from dark angles, bodies from a distance, Barrett shell casings lying in the dust. All of them were cold. The final photo is of Ryan and his teammates, Ryan standing with spotter Danny Ramirez, both smiling brightly before a deployment. Maya looked longer, a heaviness slowly spreading in her chest. Danny was so young. His eyes were gentle. There was no mistaking it. This is the friend he wants revenge on, Maya said softly. Foster turned to the next report. An analysis of the ambush. Right in the middle of the page were the words, Intel fault, source falsified route safety report. Marshall slammed his hand on the table. Damn it, I knew it. Someone altered the report to cover up the mistake. Foster pointed to a name that was blacked out, but under the black ink, some of the outlines were still visible. Colonel. Maya held her breath. Colonel Richard Vance, intelligence officer. Foster nodded slowly. Vance was the one who personally approved the itinerary that day. If he changed the information, it would not be an error. It would be a crime. Marshall turned to Maya. Ryan is not crazy. He wants justice, but he chooses to make it bloody. Foster closed the file, his voice low. The thing is, Vance is going to attend an international security conference in Munich. There are over 300 people there, all generals, colonels, and diplomats. Maya understood immediately. Her throat was dry. Ryan won't just shoot one person, she whispered. He's preparing for the most dangerous long-range assassination in history. Marshall looked straight at her. Maya, if he uses the calculation he asked you, he will have an 80% chance of success. Foster continued. And if a shot from 4,000 meters took out a high-ranking American officer in the middle of Europe, it would set off a terrible chain reaction. Maya exclaimed, Ryan doesn't just want revenge. He wants the world to pay attention to the mistake that killed his friend. Marshall squeezed Maya's shoulder. And that's why only you can stop him. 3 a.m. The armory was completely dark, save for a few flickering blue lights from the security cameras illuminating the cold metal. Maya had been given 24/7 protection, but tonight she had requested to return to the armory alone, as if to confront the darker side of this story. Marshall stood outside the door, allowing her to enter for a few minutes to regain some sense of control. But from the moment she stepped inside, Maya sensed something was wrong. The air was colder than usual, too quiet, too clean, like someone had just cleaned up the tracks. She turned on her small flashlight and began checking each workbench. When she reached the gun rack, her heart stopped. There was something new among the blueprints and gun parts. A folded sheet of paper with black tape on it. No one in the base used that kind of tape. Maya opened it and almost dropped the flashlight. It was a 4,000-meter trajectory calculation, more detailed than anything she'd ever seen. Every number, every wind layer, every deviation was eerily precise. And at the bottom of the page were 2 words scrawled in handwriting. Check. A cold wind blew past her back, causing Maya to turn around, but saw no one. She shivered, feeling as if she were being watched. Then a soft voice rang out from the dark corner. Don't be afraid, I came alone. Maya stepped back. A figure stepped forward. A young woman, short hair, a tactical vest, eyes as sharp as knives. She didn't walk quickly, she didn't pose any threat, but her dangerous aura almost suffocated the air. I'm Lena, she said, her voice thick with Central European accent, and I'm not here to hurt you. He sent me. Maya said softly but cautiously, Ryan Cole. Lena nodded slightly, a smile playing on her lips. He said you were the only one who understood what he was planning. No one else. Maya tried to calm down. Why give this to me? Because he wanted your confirmation, Lena replied. Wanted to know if his 4,000-meter shot was clean enough, accurate enough, deadly enough. Maya shook her head vigorously. No, I will not help him kill anyone. Lena took another step forward, her eyes cold. It doesn't matter if you help or not. He will do it with or without you. But if you check at least, everything won't go wrong. He doesn't want to kill someone innocent. Maya looked straight at her. Ryan wants to kill Colonel Vance. Lena did not deny it. One shot, one dead, but one who deserved to die. At that moment, the factory lights suddenly turned on, full force. Siege combat team. Marshall charged in, gun raised. Drop your weapon! Lena took a deep breath and chuckled. I don't have a gun. But the moment they approached, Lena turned and threw a tiny flashbang into the corner of the room. Boom! A white beam of light ripped through space. Marshall cursed. Soldiers fell. Maya covered her eyes. When the light faded, Lena was gone. Only the back door was left ajar, a strong wind blowing in. Marshall ran outside, but the yard was empty. Maya stood there, frozen, her hand still clutching the paper. James, this calculation is too perfect. He not only prepared, he definitely shot. Marshall turned back, his face as serious as ever. Then we have to get to Munich before him and find an ambush site before he pulls the trigger. The military plane descended in the dead of night, shaking violently as it cut through the cold clouds over southern Germany. Maya looked out the oval window. The snow-capped Alps glinted like silver blades, and the city of Munich below glowed like a living map. But to her, it was all just an unfired battlefield. Captain Marshall stood beside him, locking his carbine, his face stony. Munich is no base. This is the most populated place in Europe this week. If Ryan had fired, the consequences would have been unimaginable. We have less than 36 hours before the security conference begins, Foster said from the other chair, his voice robotic. Maya clutched her backpack. It held not a weapon, but something she considered even more dangerous. Ryan Cole's 4,000-meter ballistic calculations. He's got it all figured out, Maya whispered, just picking the location. When they landed at the makeshift military airport, the German Special Forces team, GSG-9, was waiting. A German commander, Oberst Stein, shook Marshall's hand, but his eyes were on Maya, the only civilian in the group. Are you a ballistics expert? Stein asked. Maya nodded. You could say so. Then you decide where Ghost 6 can place the gun. We need you to lead the way. You're the only expert here who understands how he thinks, Marshall whispered to Maya as they boarded the armored vehicles. The sentence sent a chill down Maya's spine. They arrived at the conference site, a modern convention center set in the middle of a large park. Stein opened the 3D map on the tablet. To shoot 4,000 meters accurately, he needs absolute height, open corner, unobstructed view, ability to escape quickly, low heat source to avoid being detected by drones. Marshall looked at Maya. Tell me, if you were him, where would you stand? Maya closed her eyes for a few seconds, feeling instinctively like someone more familiar with bullets than maps. She scanned the entire park, the skyscrapers, the telecommunications towers, the museum roof. Then she saw it. An old abandoned tower nestled in the woods, towering above all surrounding buildings, more than 4 kilometers from the convention center. A perfect location. She pointed. There, Olympia Observation Tower, 242 meters high, view of the whole city, no cameras, only one way up. Marshall said immediately, let's go up there right now. The German commandos led the way through the woods. The thin snow crunched underfoot. Helicopter lights swept across the sky. 2 armored teams circled to either side. Maya was between Marshall and Foster, her heart pounding like a drum. As he reached the foot of the tower, Foster raised his hand to signal a stop. Because on the steel door of the tower, there was something that made everyone stop. A small mark, very slight, but Maya recognized it immediately. Traces from the knife Ryan always carried. Marshall immediately turned on the flashlight and shone it high up. On the top floor, there was a faint light. Foster grabbed the radio. He's inside. Seal all exits. Give him no way to escape. Maya whispered, her voice choked. James, he got there before us, and he was ready. Marshall turned to her, his eyes cold. No, he came here to wait for us. A strong wind blew by, carrying with it the sound of metal clanking from above, like the sound of a gun being loaded. Maya's breath hitched. Ryan Cole is up here in this tower. The gun is ready, and he is the ghost waiting to pull the trigger. GSG-9 surrounded the entire base of Olympia. Red lasers dotted every dark window. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors whistling like the howling of a storm waiting to explode. Maya stood at the foot of the tower, looking up. The tower was nearly 250 meters high, dark like a giant spear thrust into the sky. At the top, a faint light moved. Ryan Cole. No doubt about it. Shall we raid? Asked a German officer. Marshall shook his head immediately. No, he will kill the whole team in 5 seconds if we rush in. Tier 1 snipers are not normal targets. There can't be any waiting, Foster said. The conference starts in a few hours. If he shoots and escapes, all Europe will be in chaos. Maya heard everything, but her mind was focused on one thing. Ryan had chosen this location because he wanted to be found. He wanted them to come. Marshall looked at Maya. You're the only one he doesn't consider an enemy. You have to go up there. Maya opened her mouth almost to protest, but Marshall's gaze was as steady as steel. You can approach him. He won't shoot you. We aren't sure. The cold wind whipped at her face. Maya looked up at the tower again. She took a deep breath. Okay. They opened the steel door. It was dark inside. The spiral staircase climbed endlessly. Maya's footsteps echoed, hollow as a funeral drum. Marshall and Foster followed a few meters behind, but stopped at the 30th floor as planned. Go ahead alone, Marshall radioed. If he attacks, scream. I'll go even if it kills me. Maya swallowed. I hope I don't have to scream. She continued climbing. The air grew colder as she climbed, the wind howling through the broken glass. Floor 80, floor 100. Each step felt like a hammer against her chest. On the 120th floor, she stopped. A clack sounded above, a familiar metallic sound, the sound of the Barrett M82A1 safety locking. Maya took a deep breath and walked up the last few steps. Top floor. The wind was strong enough to knock a stranger over. The light from Munich was not enough to illuminate the room. But she saw him. Ryan sat by the window, his back against the wall, the Barrett on its bipod. The scope was aimed straight at the convention center, a target 4 kilometers away. He did not turn back, but his deep voice rang out. I knew you would come. Maya stood 5 meters away from him. She saw the compass tattoo on his left arm flash in the red light from the helicopter. Ryan, she said, keeping her voice calm, you don't have to do this. He was silent for a few seconds, then turned his head slightly. That gaze, deep, empty, but inside was a storm that had been suppressed for too long. They killed Danny, Ryan said. Nobody paid. But killing Vance won't bring him back. Ryan laughed dryly, a laugh mixed with despair. I don't need him back. I need the truth to appear before the world. He put his eye to the scope. Maya took a step forward. Ryan, there's no way out. GSG-9, CID, Marshall, all of them are surrounding the tower. I know, he kept his aim, but I only need one shot. His finger was on the trigger. Maya shouted, Ryan, stop! Thanks for fixing my gun, Maya, he whispered. Your Barrett is perfect as last time. The trigger started to pull. The wind whistled through the shattered glass like the scream of invisible blades. The top of Olympia was so cold that Maya's breath turned to white mist. But it wasn't the weather that made her shiver. But it was Ryan Cole's finger curled on the trigger of the Barrett. Just 500 grams more force. The world will change color. Ryan, stop! Maya shouted, her voice breaking. He didn't answer. The scope was still pointed at the convention center where Colonel Vance was being escorted into the conference room for the rehearsal. The distance was exactly 4,021 meters. The altitude was perfect. The wind on the tower was slowing down, all favorable for Ryan to set the record for the longest assassination in human history. He deserves justice, Ryan said, his voice cold. Danny was killed because someone covered up his mistake, and the world never knew. Maya took a step further. But killing Vance would make Danny a pretext for war. He doesn't want that. This time, Ryan turned to look at her. His eyes, deep black, but behind the anger, Maya saw something else. Pain, guilt, and the emptiness of someone who had lost everything. You don't understand, he whispered. I was the last person to hear Danny's voice. Maya stopped, her heart pounding. Ryan continued, slow and sharp. That day, when the ambush broke out, Danny didn't scream help or run. He said, Ryan, don't let me die in vain. Ryan's eyes turned red. I swear. Maya replied immediately, and now you are turning that oath into a curse. Ryan squeezed the Barrett, the barrel tilting slightly. No, I'm finishing it. Below, Marshall whispered into the radio. Maya, we're going in 10 seconds. If he pulls the trigger, we fail. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. 10 seconds was not enough to convince an ordinary person, let alone a top marksman who had prepared for this moment for 6 months. But Maya had no choice. She walked straight to Ryan. You know what's more dangerous than a bullet? She said, her voice low, slow, steady. A misdirected bullet. Ryan paused. Maya continued. I looked at your calculations. They were 99% correct, but the remaining 1%, you didn't check because you didn't have enough barometric data on the tower. Ryan frowned. You're lying. No. Maya moved closer, her eyes never leaving him. At 4,000 meters, just 0.02 deviation, your bullet wouldn't hit Vance. He stiffened. And you know who it would hit? Maya continued, her voice choking. Dozens of people standing nearby. Soldiers, assistants, even civilian guests. Danny would never want you to kill innocent people. Ryan clenched his fist. The trigger shook. He breathed heavily. I've calculated everything. No, Maya said. You meant to kill Vance, not to not kill anyone else. The silence stretched like a bottomless abyss. Then, Ryan pulled his finger off the trigger. The Barrett clattered to the floor. Maya almost collapsed with relief. But at the same time, the assault team rushed in, breaking the door with a loud bang. Boom! A bright white flash filled the room. Ryan did not fight back. He knelt down, his hands outstretched. But before he was handcuffed, he said one last sentence, very softly, just enough for Maya to hear. Thanks for making me stop. As they escorted Ryan from the tower, a light rain began to fall over Munich. Maya stood alone, looking down at the glowing city. She stopped the bullet, but the war was far from over. Down below, an officer named Vance still walks the halls of power, as if he had no part in Danny Ramirez's death. Maya clenched her fists. It's time to bring the truth out into the light. A week after the Olympia Tower attack, the Ramstein base became an international media hub. Reporters were barred from the gates, and television helicopters circled overhead, all because of one name that dominated every newscast. Ryan Cole, Ghost Sick, the legendary sniper captured alive. Marshall and Foster escorted Maya through the corridors leading to the makeshift military court. She felt like she was not an observer, but a witness standing between justice and guilt. The opening bell rang. Ryan stood behind bulletproof glass. No chains, no shackles, but his eyes were completely empty. A man who had put his whole life on the line for one shot and then put the gun down himself. The judge announced, "The trial of Sergeant First Class Ryan Cole for desertion, threats to assassinate a federal official, and trespassing on a high-ranking military installation." The courtroom was silent. The prosecutor stood up first. He stormed into Jackson Base. He was carrying strategic weapons. He intended to shoot a high-ranking U.S. officer. This is treason. They brandished pictures of Ryan atop Olympia, Barrett on his bipod. Maya felt her breath catch. It was Ryan's military lawyer's turn. "My client didn't shoot. He stopped. He surrendered. And the reason why, you don't want to hear." The officers behind the counsel table stirred. The lawyer brought out a thick file. It was the ambush report from Ryan and Danny's team. But in the unedited version, a big red circled equipment. Intel route safety, falsified by commanding officer Colonel Richard Vance. The whole room exploded. Marshall stood up. Foster swore. The judge banged his gavel for order. "This file," the lawyer said, "shows that Colonel Vance manipulated data to cover up his bad decisions. Because of that cover-up, Private Danny Ramirez died, and for years no investigation was conducted." The judge looked at the prosecutor. "Explain?" The prosecutor sweated and turned pale. "We have not been informed about this document." The lawyer looked straight at him. "Of course, because it is hidden." Vance was called into the courtroom immediately. He entered in full uniform, but his face looked as if all the blood had been drained. The lawyer didn't give him time to breathe. "Colonel Vance, did you revise the report before the departure date of April 17th? Vance was speechless. I followed the procedure." "You killed Danny Ramirez!" the lawyer shouted. The room was deathly silent. Vance sweated, blinked, then lowered his head. No protest, no denial. Marshall whispered, "Damn, he knows he's backed into a wall." "It's Maya's turn." She stepped up to the witness stand, her heart pounding, but her voice clear. "Ryan Cole is not a terrorist. He is a soldier who became dangerous because the truth was buried. If it weren't for me, he would have shot. But he stopped. He chose justice over revenge." Ryan looked at Maya through the bulletproof glass for the first time during the trial. Not with the cold eyes of Ghost 6, but with the eyes of a human. Court conclusion. Ryan was convicted of desertion, 5 years in prison with possible reduction. Not convicted of assassination because he did not pull the trigger. And most importantly, Colonel Richard Vance was arrested on the spot, guilty of tampering with military documents causing death. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Marshall put his hand on Maya's shoulder. "You just saved 2 lives, Ryan and Danny." Maya exhaled, her eyes stinging slightly. But she knew this wasn't over. When one sniper stopped, the next battle wouldn't be on the high towers, but in the dark rooms where the truth had been hidden for so long. A light rain fell on Arlington National Cemetery, glittering on the thousands of white tombstones. The wind rustled the small flags at the foot of each row of stones, like the size of the souls sleeping here. Maya stood before the tablet with the name engraved on it. Private Danny Ramirez, 1997-20, loyal beyond death. Marshall and Foster stood back, giving Maya a moment of privacy. She placed an empty bullet on the edge of the target, a token snipers left for their fallen comrades. Her hand shook slightly. "Danny," she whispered, "everything is clear. The truth is no longer buried. Ryan, he lives, and he stopped for you." The wind carried her voice, carrying it into the endless space of white tombstones. A familiar voice rang out from behind. If he were alive, he would laugh out loud. Maya turned. Ryan stood there, his hands lightly cuffed in front of him, flanked by 2 military guards. But for the first time since they met at Olympia Tower, he no longer had the cold look of Ghost 6. He's just Ryan Cole, a soldier who lost a friend and nearly lost his soul. Maya moved closer. "Are you okay?" Ryan nodded. "Better than the other day." Then he took a deep breath. "I heard Vance pleaded guilty." "Yes," said Maya. "He will be tried civilly and military. No one can cover him anymore." Ryan looked at Danny's gravestone for a long time. "I should have protected him better." Maya shook her head. "It's not your fault. It's the fault of the person who made up the fake safe route." Ryan smiled sadly. "Thank you for keeping me from pulling the trigger." He looked at Maya, his eyes no longer filled with resentment, only deep gratitude. "If you hadn't gone up the tower that day, I wouldn't be standing here." "I did what Danny wanted me to do," Maya said softly. "Go on living." 2 guards signaled that visiting time was over. Ryan squeezed Maya's hand for a second. A hard squeeze, like a promise given without words. Then he turned away, his shadow disappearing behind the trees. Not the footsteps of an assassin anymore, but of someone starting again in the darkness. On the way out of the cemetery, Marshall walked next to Maya. "You did what the entire Special Forces team couldn't," he chuckled. "You made a legendary sniper lay down his gun." Foster interjected, "And so CID has a formal offer for you." Maya frowned. "Suggestion?" Marshall nodded. "We want you to join the ballistics investigation team. It's not easy work, there are no hours, but you'll help prevent others from becoming a Ghost 6. Maya looked up at the gray sky, the light rain. She remembered Ryan's eyes as he dropped the gun. She remembered the numbers, the calculations, the darkness she had faced. She smiled slightly. "Okay, I don't want to just stand by and watch anymore." Marshall patted her on the shoulder. "Welcome to the team." That night, Maya returned to her new office at the CID Center. When she turned on the light, she saw a small envelope on the table. No seal, no sender, just a line of text. "Thank you, Maya. When I return, this debt will be paid. R." Maya chuckled, without fear, without worry, because she knew one thing for sure. The Ghost 6 legend isn't over, and the next chapter, she won't be entering it alone.